Good morning. Today we are looking at lesson 2.5a, which is applying the distributive property. Before we get there, we're going to look at some vocabulary words so we know what we're looking at and what we're talking about when we're solving or simplifying these expressions. So the first word we're going to look at is what is a term. Terms are parts being added or subtracted from each other. So each of these is a term. X is a term because they're all added here together, added or subtracted. 4 is a term, negative 2x is a term, and negative 10 is a term. So we would just list these out. X, 4, negative 2x, and negative 10. Listing out just what our terms are. Like terms, these are terms with the same variables. A variable is just a letter with the same variable parts, or is a constant. And we'll talk about what a constant is down here in a minute. But let's look back up here first. Our like terms are terms that we could add together that have the same variable. So if we look here, this has the variable or the letter x, and this also has the letter x. So we could combine those two together. But this is really a 1x, so I'm going to put a 1 there. We could combine the 1x with the negative 2x. If we were adding things up, we could also add up this 4 with this negative 10 because they don't have any letters with them. And that's jumping down here what a constant term is. It's a number without a variable, without a letter. So also our like terms are 4, so and 4 and negative 10. So these two we could combine, and these two we could combine. Next, we have our coefficients. Coefficients are the numbers in front. Whoa. Let's try that again. In front of the variable, in front of the letter. So look at our terms that just have letters here. Here's an x, that's a letter. In front of it, it's really a 1, so a 1 would be our coefficient. There's no letter here, ignore that one. Our letter here is x, so in front of it, we have a negative 2. And there's no letter here, so ignore that one. So our coefficients are just 1 and negative 2. And last, constants. We talked about these already. These are the numbers without variables. Our two constants here are 4 and negative 10 because there's no letters with those. We'll look at another one of those near the end of the lesson. So we're going to just simplify by combining our like terms, the ones with the same letter. So here, it's just like our rules for adding and subtracting. I would circle what you have with 7x combined with a negative 11x. These are different signs. Remember the song, same sign, add and keep, different signs, subtract. So 11 minus 7 should give us 4, but there's more negatives. And these are all x's, so it would be negative 4x. It's like having 7 apples and you're going to take away 11 apples. Well, you owe someone 4 apples now because you're negative. Let's look at the next one here. Combining our like terms. I always like to look for the ones with the letters first. This is the only one with a letter. There's nothing we can combine it with, so it's just 2n. And then here we have a 5 and a positive 2. Those are also like terms because they're just numbers. Our constants, 5 plus 2 is 7. So our answer would be 2n plus 7. That is the same as 7 plus 2n. If you flip-flopped it around, it's alright. However, your answer key on like at a textbook or on the MCA would probably write it like this. Next, we have a y here and we have a y here. This first one is 6y. This is a negative, really a 1y. If there's ever just a letter all by itself, there's always just one letter there, so it's a 1y. So we have that positive 6 and a negative 1, different signs, subtract. 6 minus 1 is 5, and they're all y's. It's like 6 yams minus 1 yam, now you have 5 yams. Again, you can use a calculator starting with this chapter. Look at our letters first. Here we have a 7W. Here we have a positive 3W. There aren't any W's here, but I know the opposite of a negative is going to make here a positive. So that's one big plus sign. So let's combine our like terms. 3 plus 7 is going to give us 10W. Like 7 watermelons plus 3 more watermelons, we have 10 watermelons. Notice the W didn't change, it stayed the same. And then this is just plus 5. A couple more. Now we have two letters. We can only combine the ones that are the same. Here we have 10G, like 10 grapes. And here we have a negative 4G, or negative 4 grapes. Well, 10 grapes minus 4 grapes, 10 minus 4 is 6. So we have 6 grapes. And some of you might be wondering, how do you know if you add or subtract? Well, look at your signs. Same sign, add and keep, different signs, subtract. We have different signs, so I subtracted. And then we have negative 6H plus 5H. So different signs again, subtract. 6 minus 5 is 1. 1H, but there's more negatives, so it's a negative 1. So 6G minus 1H. If you wrote this the other way, negative 1H plus 6G, that's the same thing. Alright, here we're looking at P's. Again, if there's not a number there, it's always a 1. That's really a negative 1P. No P's there. Plus 4P. And then over here, the opposite of a negative, 2 negatives there make a positive. So there's a positive 2P as well. So negative 1 plus 4, different signs, subtract. 4 minus 1 is 3. So we have 3P, but then there's 2 more. 3 plus 2 more is 5P. You could put in your calculator negative 1 plus 4 plus 2. And then last, we just have this positive 3. Moving along, a couple more like this. Always look at our signs here first. We know the opposite of a negative is going to make a positive. So it doesn't matter which letter really you do first. If you want to go in alphabetical order, you can. So I'm going to do maybe the R's first. 9R plus 7R. They're all positive, so just add them up. 9 plus 7 is 16R. And then we have 15T and a negative 6T. Different signs, subtract. 15 minus 6 is going to give us 9T, and there's more positives, so put the plus between there. If there were more negatives, it would be a minus. So there's our answer, 16R plus 9T. You can't combine these together because they're different letters. And going back up here, you can't combine these together, they're different letters. This one, the 3 doesn't have a letter, so we couldn't combine those anyways. Down here we have 4Y. This is really a 1Y. So there's another, and then more, three Y's here we have. So 4Y plus 1Y is 5Y, and 5 minus 6, well, 5 minus 6 is there's more negatives. There's one more negative, negative 1Y, and then just minus 10. Can't combine those because these have Y's and this doesn't. Alright, moving on, a little bit different. It says write and simplify an expression for the perimeter. Perimeter, we know, means adding up all the sides. So if I know this is a rectangle, if the bottom is 4H, the top also has to be 4H. If the right side's 1H, the left side is 1H. So if we add these all up, I'm going to write out an expression here. 4H plus 1H, I did this one and this one, plus another 4H, plus another 1H. So combining all our like terms, 4 plus 1 is 5. 5 plus 4 more is 9, plus 1 more. They're all H's, so we can add them all up to give us 10H. Over here, same thing. We have 2M on the bottom, so there must be 2M on the top. M plus 3 on the right, so M plus 3 on the left because it's a rectangle. Some of you might be thinking, can't I just add this up? from right here? And the answer is yes, you can. This is 1m, so we have 1m here, plus 2 more. 1 plus 2 is 3m, plus 1 more is 4m, plus 2 more is 6m. So those are all just the m's. Then we just have a number 3 plus 3 is 6. So if you want to write it all out like we did here and then combine, you can. But if you want to combine right from the picture, that works too. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit. We've been just combining like terms. Now we're going to look towards the area. So area of a rectangle is just base times our height. So if I'm looking at just this blue one, the base is x. We don't know what it is. The height is 3. So we write that as 3 times x, or just 3x, because we know if they're touching, that is multiplied. Most of the time, you'll see it written like this, 3x. 3 times x is just 3x. And then looking at this red rectangle, the base is 4. The height is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. So our area of this rectangle is 3x plus 12. You can't combine it to make 15 because there's no x's with the 12. Same thing here. Base of this first rectangle is x. The height is 6x. So we really have 6x times a 1x. Well, 6 times 1 is just 6. This is all multiplication, really. So we can multiply just whatever numbers we want here first. And then x times x. Well, instead of writing x times x, remember back when we did our perfect squares, and we wrote like 3 times 3 is really 9? Well, we know 2 times 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is also 9. So instead of writing x times x, we're going to write x to the power of 2, or squared. So your answer there would be 6x squared. Only when you multiply do you get that exponent. And then over here on our next rectangle, our base is 7 and our height is 6x. Well, 6 times 7 is 42, and there's an x. It's touching or multiplied. So our answer to this one would be 6x squared plus 42x. And this is our answer because we can't combine these. This x is squared and this one is not. So now we're going to apply the distributive property, which is really what we just did. We're multiplying. Because this negative 4 is touching the parentheses, we're distributing. Alright? I like to think of this as our classroom. Anything inside the parentheses is inside our classroom. Whatever's touching the parentheses is our teacher. So that's our teacher, and this is our classroom. If the teacher is going to give candy out to the classroom, the teacher has to give the candy out to everybody in the classroom. You can't just pick some people and not others. To be fair, we would have to give it to everyone. So we're going to multiply this negative 4 by the 3g and by the 8. So here, think of this as our classroom. The teacher's going to stand in the front, that negative 4. And then in our classroom, on one side we have 3g, and the other we have plus 8. So we're going to multiply this table space or desk or whatever. Negative 4 times 3, multiply is negative 12, and it's also multiplied by g, so negative 12g. Then negative 4 times 8, we know it's going to be a negative, they don't get along. You're not adding, you're multiplying. 8 times 4 is 32. So our answer will be negative 12g minus 32. I would like you to rewrite your answer down below. It'll help us out on our next day when we do our next lesson. This is the same exact type of problem. Here's our classroom. Here's our teacher. Our teacher this time is just standing in the back of the classroom. That's okay. When we multiply, I'm just going to put her out front, or him. And then in our classroom we have x, which is really a 1x, and then plus 10. So 7 times 1 is 7, also multiplied by x. And 7 times 10 is a positive 70. So we have 7x plus 70. Here's a couple more. This one, our teacher, what's touching? It's just a negative. We said before, if you just have like a letter, it's just 1, like 1x. Same thing with a negative. That negative is really a -1. So that's our teacher. I like to say she's hiding. She's under her desk. You can't see her, but she's really there. And then our classroom, everybody inside the parentheses, the -2m and the -6. We have to multiply by both because everybody in the classroom should get that candy. So a negative times a negative, two grumpy people, they get along. We know it's going to be a positive. 1 times 2 is 2. Also multiplied by m. And then -1 times -6, again making it positive. 1 times 6 is 6. So our answer is 2m plus 6. This one's a little bit easier like the first one we did. Here's our teacher out front, -5. And then our classroom is k and a -12. Again, there's nothing in front of the k, it would just be a 1k. So -5 times 1 is -5, also multiplied by k. Negative times a negative, I know it's going to make a positive. You can use your calculator or a multiplication table to multiply. 5 times 12, or think of a clock. There's 12 numbers on a clock, 5 minutes between each. There's 60 minutes total. So -5k plus 60. Last slide here. Oh, almost the last slide, sorry. Our teacher out front, ooh, it's a letter. That's okay. And in our classroom we have -5n and a -9. Again, there's nothing in front of there, that's a 1n. So 1 times -5 is -5. N times n, be careful, that's really n to the power of 2. Just like we said, 3 times 3 is the same as 3 to the power of 2. N times n is n to the power of 2. We have an n here and an n here. And then 1 times -9 is still -9, and it's also multiplied by n. So our answer is -5n squared minus 9n. You cannot combine these together because 1 is the power of 2 and 1 is just an n. So this is our answer. Alright, this one looks a little bit tricky. It's really not that bad. We need to think, who is first inside our classroom? What two terms do we have inside our classroom? Well, here's our two terms inside one big set of parentheses. So I know that's my classroom, y plus 7. This here is really the teacher because it's only one term. Okay, it looks funny because it's in parentheses here. If we were to not have that in parentheses, this is what you would see, y plus 7 minus 8. Well, that minus 8 is subtracting. It's not touching or multiplied directly to the parentheses. So it does need to be in parentheses for this problem because it's a negative. So they're touching. Now we know that's multiplied. So this is really a 1y. -8 times 1 is -8. And there's a y. -8 times 7, we know it's going to be negative. Don't get along. 7 times 8 is 56. So our answer is -8y minus 56. Next, again, like this last one, identify your classroom first if that's helpful. The two terms that go on top are 2w and 7. Out front, this is really a -1, so -1w. And multiplying, -1 times 2 is -2. W times w is the same as w squared. And then -1 times 7 is -7. A lot of people stop there, but we really do need to include this w as well. Our answer is -2w squared minus 7w. Alright, last one. Like this, I'd like you to try it on your own. Pause the video and then play when you're done. Alright, inside our classroom here, we have a q. It's really a 1q. And a -4. Remember that negative always goes with whatever comes after. That goes with the 4. And then our teacher out front is also a -4. So -4 times 1 is -4 and multiplied by q. And then -4 times -4 makes a positive 16. 4 times 4 is 16. So our answer is negative 4q plus 16. Alright. There are a couple problems on your homework like this one that we already went over one like this already, but quick refresher. Terms are the parts that are added or subtracted from each other. So our terms, just list them all out. Y, 9, negative 3y, 2h, and negative 17. Our like terms, I have these highlighted or colored coordinated here. The 1y is combined with, or would combine with, the negative 3y. And we have two other like terms as well. Just the numbers 9 and negative 17. Nothing combines with the 2h. Just no other h's. Our coefficients over here, the number in front of the variable. So in front of this variable here, there's a 1. There's no variable here. In front of our letter here, it's a negative 3. In front of our letter here, it's a 2. And there's no letter there. So last, our constants, the numbers without variables, just the regular old numbers, 9 and negative 17. Alright, I know it was a lot, but good luck, and show your work on your homework.